Okay. All right. So I think as we all are quite aware that we are living in some very difficult times, and there is so much of stress on individuals and also on Christian marriages. This is a subject topic as and many of us have felt that we needed to address, because there's just so many Christian marriages which are struggling and many are breaking also. So it's so important that we understand the importance of premarital counseling. And we are very, very blessed and privileged to have Dr. Jamila Koshy with us. For most of us who have been attending her sessions, she needs no introduction, but for those of us who are new, she's a psychiatrist by practice. She graduated from the Armed Forces Medical College, AFMC, Pune, and completed her postgraduate studies in psychological medicine from the University of Mumbai or Bombay, and she has served in the Indian Army. So Dr. Jamila is also a writer. She's a thinker. She's contributed in many books and journals, and she's also associated with Tracy, and truly is one of the leading voice in the Christendom, as we know. So we are very thankful and grateful to God for providing Dr. Jamila Koshy to speak to us tonight. So over to Dr. Jamila Koshy as she leads us on this session, Why Premarital Counseling. Welcome, Doctor.
Okay, Abhijit, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with all of you as usual, and nice to see so many young people here. Okay, so the topic that I've been asked to speak on today is why premarital counseling. So it's not on premarital counseling, but why should we have premarital counseling? What is the need for it? That's what I understand is the issue at hand. And actually, it's quite relevant because most Indians don't really have any form of premarital counseling, apart from what little bit of knowledge we might get from our friends or from our parents or something like that. Some little, advice or tips may be given. The institution which probably practices the best premarital counseling in India, or the most regular, is the Catholic Church, who have been insisting on premarital counseling for many years now. The Protestant Church and the Orthodox churches are rather far behind in this. Some churches do have a short kind of, one day something, you meet the pastor before the marriage, that sort of thing. But we haven't stressed it as much as we should. And we really should, because as Abhijit said, there is a lot of strain on marriages. There are a lot of problems that people are facing. So let's look at that, okay? So I'm going to look at this in 3 sections. One is, the various areas of marriage which really would need to be covered. The various areas, what is marriage about? The second is that what are the problems that we can encounter in those areas? And lastly, why do we encounter these problems? And that all, as we discuss this, it'll become clear why we need to discuss and have the whole emphasis on premaritally addressing these issues. Okay, so yes. What is marriage really about? And this is, I would just like to talk about 6 areas where marriage becomes the closest relationship you will ever have. All right. While our relationship with our parents might be longer, in the sense that we relate to our parents for hopefully about 60 years or so, given a good lifespan for both parents and the children, yet for a long time, children. So relating to some of this, marriage is probably the longest relationship that any of us will have. It's also the closest, okay? And it is also unique because there are different features of marriage, of course, which we do not share with any other relationship. So it is the most important relationship really that anybody needs to think about. And it's very clear why, isn't it? I mean, just think about the physical aspects. We are closest to our marriage partner because we share so much physically, right? I'm not even talking about the sexual part yet. I'm just talking about sharing physical space with the partner. We often have to share a bedroom. We share a cupboard. We share the bathroom. We share the bed. And again, I'm not talking about the physical part, just sharing a bed. There are so many issues which come into just sharing a bed. All right. Financially, we are sharing our resources. We are sharing our money. We are sharing our home. We're sharing our property. We are sometimes sharing clothes. We are sharing our vehicle, okay, our car, our bike. All these things become now common property in a sense. What about emotionally? Emotionally, we, in a good marriage, we are sharing our, our emotions, our memories, our happiness, our joys. Everything is shared with this one person. That person becomes, in a good marriage, your best friend. Also, you're sharing romance. So you're sharing, that whole love relationship with a person, with you're not sharing with anybody else. Okay. Ideally, of course, you should not be sharing this with anybody else. So that love relationship, that is also a strong emotion. Apart from that, you're also sharing, in a sense, a mutual counseling relationship, okay, where you're both helping and advising each other, maybe warning each other, encouraging each other, being a critic sometimes. So there is all of these emotional aspects which come into the relationship of marriage. What about the social part? Socially, also, this is the closest relationship you're going to have. Suddenly, you are one unit, right? You are one person. Sometimes you share a name, sometimes you don't. But definitely, you are seen as one person, to the extent that sometimes only one name is written. Okay, though that is not a good practice, but it is as if you have become like one unit. So you're relating to your parents and to your friends in an ideal marriage together. Okay, so it is like one unit. You're together handling all these various complex social relationships that human beings have. Then, of course, we come to the sexual aspect. You are as a couple, hopefully, if you have had no other sexual relationship in the past, you're finding out how it works, you're expressing your likes and dislikes, you're getting over your shyness, you're finding a satisfactory sexual relationship with this person. And lastly, and tying it all together, is the spiritual aspect. You are sharing life's ups and downs, okay? The periods when you're most vulnerable, when you need to pray, when you need to ask, our creator God for help, when you have issues where you are emotionally upset and you need to encourage each other to be strong in the Lord, right? Where you need to encourage each other to carry on despite hardship and trouble. When you are perhaps teaching each other, correcting each other in important the worldview aspects in the spiritual, the spiritual sort of way of looking at things, where you need to correct each other. So there is this complex spiritual part of human beings, which you also have to share with your couple, with your partner in a perfect, ideal marriage. So there are all these aspects, right? Now, what can go wrong? The more important question perhaps will be what can't go wrong. Okay, because so many things can go wrong, because this is a very complicated relationship. This is a very intense relationship. This is a very multifaceted relationship. So look at some of those things. Okay, I just like to talk about one of those things one by one. So I talked about.
Just a moment. I think the picture is slightly pixelating from your side.
Better now?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, okay. I think so.
Okay, so I was just talking about how each of these areas can have problems. So let's look at some of the common problems that I've seen and others have seen in marital relationships in these various areas. Think about sharing space, okay? I said that it's a close physical relationship. You have to share cupboard space, you have to share a room. Sometimes that's not easy, isn't it? Who gets to decide who takes the upper shelves or the lower shelves? Who decides who cleans the cupboard, okay? Who decides how much space each person gets? Is one person being selfish in the way that they are, using the cupboard space? What about the bathroom? Okay. Of course, there's all these jokes about how, the toilet seat up and down, men, women, all those things. But it goes beyond that, isn't it? It's just the soap you use, the smell in the bathroom, or the towels, or so many things. You have to share a bathroom with someone. It's not always very easy. Sharing the bed, that is also not easy, right? You have to make sure that both people are comfortable? Is one person taking more of the bed space than the other? Are you sleeping comfortably? You know, does one like it hot, one like it cold, one likes the blanket on, off? All these things come up. So it is not easy. And unless you have a good understanding, these small things can become big triggers. Think about the emotional relationship. I said, no, that it's supposed to be the closest emotional relationship. But does that always happen? Friendship takes effort. Friendship takes communication. You have to talk to each other. You have to be able to say sorry. You have to be able to forgive. You have to be able to explain. You have to be able to compromise and adjust. So there is this complex adjustment emotionally, which needs to be continually going on. There have to be common interests to talk about. What do you talk about when you communicate? Do you share interests? Do you try to develop your partner's interest? This is something which you need to do, right? What about romance, right? I said, now, suppose yours is an arranged marriage. Does that mean that there will be no romantic feelings which come up? No, you have to develop it and handle it, right? So how do you develop a love relationship for your partner? How do you perhaps get over your past history and move on to this relationship, particularly if you've had some previous affairs or whatever it is? Sometimes there are wrong ideas which many people have about beauty and what attracts me to a person, and a lot of unlearning may need to be done before you sort of learn how to adjust to your partner. Emotionally also, it's not everybody who knows how to listen and respond appropriately, right? So today itself, I had somebody who said that her partner complained that she wasn't listening to him. Now, usually it's the other way around, that women are complaining that men don't listen to them. But in this case, the woman said that, my husband told me that I wasn't listening to him, that I was just brushing aside what he was saying, and I need to work on this. Okay, so listening with with an understanding and a compassionate and empathic understanding, and responding appropriately, offering comfort, not brushing things aside. These are marital skills, okay, which need to be talked about and discussed. They don't come just from the sky. What about this whole thing about finance, right? I said that we share everything, but how? How do you share? Do you have a joint account? Do you share everything? Do you have some money for discretionary spending? If one person is spending more or less, how do you figure this out? How do you handle dowry demands? How do you handle sharing the car, perhaps, which you might be very possessive about? What about your bike? Will you lend it to your spouse? Will you decide to use it together? Suppose they are careless. Suppose they have an accident. So many things come up. How do you handle all this? One of the biggest issues is social, okay? Because you have to adjust to each other's family and friends. And probably the biggest issue in our country would probably be family. How do you adjust to each other's families? How do you care for the other person's family as your own? And here again, there would be a lot of expectations, social expectations which come up. Daughter-in-law has to be like this, bahu aise rehti hai, bahu, the dulhan aise rehta, whatever. So all these various things that people have. How do you negotiate them? How do you protect your family, your spouse, sometimes from your family's perhaps excessive demands? How do you balance the two? So all these things need to be figured out. Sometimes friends can be a problem because, well, there are exes to be dealt with. Sometimes same gender friendships can become a problem. One or the other partner grudges the time spent with the same gender friends. Sometimes opposite gender friends become a problem, and one or the other partner becomes a little jealous, a little insecure. So how do you deal with all this? All this needs to be discussed and thought about. Then, of course, we come to the last two, which is the sexual and the spiritual issues. So sexually also, sometimes there is an inability to communicate. There's an inability to reach that comfort level with both the partners, inability to enjoy the relationship. And that needs to be prepared for, okay? It needs to be talked about early so that we know how to handle these things. Spiritually, how do you learn to adjust to each other, to encourage each other, to perhaps figure out each other's, spiritual understanding and strengths and gifts, and encourage each other to use those gifts? How do you deal with problems in your relationship in a Christian way, forgiving, or, talking about it in a nice way, not holding grudges? How do you do all this? All this needs to be taught and prepared for. Okay, the last section that we're going to talk about is why there are these problems. What are the obstacles which happen in couples to prevent them from reaching a perfect, happy marriage? What are the various issues? Now, the issues may be that often there is a family element. Okay, so the families demonstrate a certain dynamic. So the father and the mother, how you have seen your father and mother interacting, will often affect you in a very subconscious level. You just feel that this is how men behave, this is how mothers behave, this is how the dynamic is, that, okay, fathers earn or mothers, cook the food, or that's a very superficial thing. But often this is the understanding, isn't it? Perhaps it would be that, the clothes are hung out by somebody, or, whatever it is, all the various decisions that are taken, they're taken by this person or that person, depending on how you have been brought up by your family. And this makes a lot of difference. And unless you are aware of these things, that, okay, I feel that it is not okay for a woman to not know cooking because my mom is an expert cook. So perhaps this is what I think. So I feel very guilty if I, as a woman, don't know how to cook, and I feel insecure or inferior if somebody cooks better than me. So women can have this as much as men. Okay. So we need to understand and process all this. And when do we do it? Hopefully before we get married. All right. Now, when you talk about families, some of the dynamic may be very unhealthy also. We need to accept this. And it is only as we grow up, we say that one aspect of growing up is to be able to understand the mistakes our parents have made and to, love them just the same, but to also be able to consciously not replicate those in our own lives. So particularly if there have been big things like domestic violence and abuse in the family, it's very important for us to process this, understand this, and realize that it would be very easy for us to fall into the same patterns. If a man is seeing a father abusing, it's very easy to fall into the same pattern. If a woman who has seen her mother abused, it's very easy to expect that this is natural. All right. So these unhealthy patterns have to be thought through, and you reject the internalization of it. Now, we also need to remember that different religions would cause a different emphasis in different parts of marriage. And even if you don't marry outside the religion, within the religion, even within our own religion, within Christianity, there is a lot of scope of differences between churches, between denominations, on how we understand the family dynamic. So some churches and groups would teach that there is a very one-way submission in marriage, where the woman submits to the man is the leader. And a lot of other denominations would think that, no, this is not true, that you should mutually love and respect and submit to each other. So this aspect can sort of influence the way you go into marriage, and you need to know how your partner thinks. Now, education and exposure to different philosophies may also affect you. So, for instance, if you have been to a college or a group of friends or whatever who are very comfortable discussing LGBTQ issues, you may have different views on it from a very conservative Christian who has not had that exposure. You may feel something about abortion or adoption. So education and exposure can make a difference in the way we think and feel. It may even start with as simple a thing as wearing shorts outside, or how men should wear their hair, or how much, what sort of gold women should wear, whatever, simple things. So our education and our exposure will affect the way we think about various issues. Of course, we need to realize the importance of media and social media. Okay, so that is going to make a lot of difference. The way we see people behaving will affect us. So if the norm is that women are to be thin and slim or have a perfect figure, we may have internalized that this is what my wife should be like. Women may have internalized too that this is what I should be like, and may feel very insecure if they see another woman like that close to their partner. All sorts of things can happen. Okay. So media and social media influence us a lot. Celebrities, these role models that we see on media, influence us a lot. And of course, let us not forget the role of porn as well. A lot of young people have been exposed to it, and that also warps our understanding of what people should be like. Okay, There is also a gender-based difference here, and we need to talk about this probably also briefly, that I did a study some time back on the difference in how different age groups and different genders, that is men and women, and different language groups looked at the Efficiency 5 passage, which the husband and wife passage, how they looked at it. And what I found a very interesting pattern, that men in the middle ages, the middle age, 30 to around 50 years, that age group of men tended to be very equal in their understanding of the husband and wife relationship. They're very much more open to considering husbands and wives as equal, and to respect each other and share leadership roles, share decision making, that sort of thing. Whereas young men and older men over the age of 70 were very much much more likely to feel that the man is the leader and the woman should sort of follow or obey or submit to the man's leadership. That was an interesting finding, isn't it? Probably the middle age group men have lived a marital life and they have been able to work through this. The older group of men, of course, were not influenced by the newer attitudes and interpretations of scripture, maybe whatever. So that was a very interesting finding that I had. Whereas women throughout all age groups are more happy and open in an equal relationship. They wish to have a mutually respectful relationship. That was the finding that I had. So there is a gender difference here as well. And it's only when you discuss this beforehand that you can understand where each is coming from and you are able to adjust together. So I hope I have brought out that there are so many issues here, and it's because we have all these issues, the close physical relationship, the financial sharing which has to happen, the social sort of presentation of one unit relating to family and friends, that has to happen, that emotional connection has to happen, and a sexual closeness has to happen, of course, and a spiritual oneness, all these, that ties all these things together. All these things have to happen, and often there are flaws and mistakes in these various things which don't happen, right? And as I said, it can happen because of our families. It can happen because of our understanding being, in one way or the other. It can happen because of the religious teaching that we've had from our churches. It may happen because of social media. It may happen because we have internalized all these things, all right? And so it is necessary for us to talk, discuss, understand, process where we are. Sometimes we need to correct what we are thinking, okay? And particularly things like the place for beauty, okay, the place for money, the issue of dowry, the issue of caste. All these things have to be discussed and understood before you think of marriage. That where am I in this? What do I need to correct to bring myself more into line with what God's pattern is, okay, to figure out what I think God's pattern is, and to bring myself in line with this so that I would have a fulfilling and a happy relationship with my spouse. Okay, so this is what I wanted to share, and now I want to leave the time open for questions and comments, and we can take it from there.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Jamila. Okay, just a second. I will probably, yeah,